Are you ready to make one of the best burgers that you have ever had? It's time to learn to make an Oklahoma onion smash burger. So the first thing that I have been doing is I have been marinating some large meatballs using ground beef. I've been marinating them in liquid aminos. Now, people with gluten sensitivity have a few options. You can find some soy sauce brands that don't have gluten in them at all, like LaCroix. There's also tamari, which is very similar, and there is liquid aminos. Now, when it comes to marinating meat specifically, I find liquid aminos to be an absolutely delicious option, and I've gotten a lot of praise from Nikki since I've started using liquid aminos instead of soy sauce. I am going with a somewhat non-traditional type of onion. I'm going with a Vidalia onion. You're also going to need to be going ahead and getting out some butter. I don't necessarily think that it's necessary to warm it up to room temperature if you keep it in the refrigerator. But this dish is going to end up using a lot of butter. When it comes to many different kinds of smash burgers, it's an art, not a science. Each one's going to be a little bit different, and I think that that's part of the appeal of the dish. First things first, let's go in here and chop up this onion. What I like to do is I like to just cut the top and the bottom off of the Vidalia onion, but you can also use white or yellow onions. In fact, the Vidalia onion is just kind of a sweeter yellow onion. Take that and then kind of rip or just be very careful, rip just the outer layer off. Now, I don't know if my technique is approved by every chef, but that kind of works for me. The Vidalia onion does not exactly have like a strong core in it, so I'm fine with keeping it. I think that it kind of adds to the flavor. The rest of them, yellow or white, you're gonna need to remove this inner ring. We're probably gonna take out just a little bit. We're gonna cut this in half. I suppose that keeping it whole and having some nice rings is fine too. But I think that I would prefer it in half, and I am actually just gonna pop out this little section in the middle. You could try to do this with a knife. I'm not that talented. So what I like to use is a mandolin or a V-slicer. Either adjust it to its thinnest possible blade or have a very thin blade in there. I don't have an adjustable one, so I am just using the thinnest blade that I have got. I also got some gloves. These have seen better days, but I promise they're clean. They're just have been stained from a lot of use. You could use a hand guard as well. They probably recommend using a hand guard, but I actually feel like that a hand guard is even more dangerous than just a glove and going very slowly. Okay, be very careful using a V-slicer. This one's nice because it actually has a nice little catch tray. I've seen like chefs in chef videos do this without a glove, and I'm like, wow, how does that even work? So now that you've got them all in there, I suppose that what we can do is just kind of run through, and we can make sure that all of the little segments are separated out. This is a very essential part of it because you need the onions to be as thin as possible by the time that you start the cooking process. You need to divide your butter into tablespoon sections. 1 tablespoon, another tablespoon, and another tablespoon. Yes, this dish uses a lot of butter. You also need to go ahead and set out 4 slices of American cheese. Yes, you know what this is. American cheese is not only a pretty traditional cheese on this burger, but it also melts really well. Okay, so you're gonna basically be fusing the onions to the bottom and melting the cheese on the top. When it comes to gluten-free buns, I suppose you could make your own, but that's very challenging. So I'm not gonna be covering that right now. But what I do like is, of all the options there, I feel like the least bad option is Canyon. I actually think that they taste pretty decent. And while I don't have to eat gluten-free, I do end up eating the gluten-free buns with Nikki anyway, so I wanna make sure that they taste decent. We're gonna be toasting these buns using the same pan that we're going to cook the burgers in, which means that we're gonna go with these first. So make sure Your buns are sliced. So you may be asking yourself, how am I going to cook these burgers? Well, I actually recommend an electric griddle for this job, and it has a few advantages that some other methods don't. I suppose that the most common way to do it would be using a cast iron skillet, but using an electric griddle, it gives you a lot more room to work. So it reduces the margin of error for how you're going to be making these burgers. Take a tablespoon of butter and put it on the electric skillet, and we're gonna be toasting the buns really, really quick. It won't take too long. By toasting them this way, you will achieve a really, really nice sort of texture on the bun. So just put them down where the butter was. You can do all 4 at once. And then I just like to use both of my hands and just move them around. If you're moving them around, you get a nice even texture on them. And then like take a spatula and lift it up, make sure that they're good. It takes seconds to get a good toast on these, okay? Just seconds. It does not take any longer than that. This bun's a little weird. It kind of like, all the bread part of it kind of went down here. I'm tempted to get a new one, but I'm sure it'll taste fine. If it's between me and Nikki, I'll probably take that one. Or maybe I'll give it to her and she'll never know. We got our onions. Even with an electric skillet, you need to only do like 2 of these at one time, okay? So go ahead and take your meatballs. A chef's press is what is recommended for this process, but we're gonna go with a spatula because I don't own a chef's press, and I'm pretty sure you don't own a chef's press either. You know what else would be good on these burgers? The candied bacon recipe from last time, but you did not hear that from me. These burgers are gonna go directly from the griddle to the bun, okay? There's not gonna be any in-between phase. So a little bit of ketchup, a little bit of mustard. I like to put them on all 4. You can do 2 burger patties at once, okay? On a griddle. Don't go with any more. That's way too much to manage, okay? But take the butter and go ahead and put it back onto the griddle. Now the butter down on the bottom is going to cook the onions really well, and they're gonna cook the onions while the burger itself is cooking. Immediately take 1/4 of the onions, put them in a mound right there, and then another 1/4 of the onions, and it doesn't have to be exact, and put it right there. Okay, then put a meatball on top of the mound, put another meatball on top of the mound, okay? And now you are going to smash, and then do it again with the next burger. Try to get all of the onions underneath the burger. The onions are going to be very, 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 very cooked by the time that the burger gets done. I am going to switch to a non-slotted spatula. We're learning this on the fly. Once we feel like that we have fused all the ingredients together, we're gonna flip. And again, it will not take long. These patties are so thin. Once you see some good browning on the bottom, it's time to kind of put everything and flip it back over. There we go, just like that. And we're ready to flip again. If there's any stray onions, try to get them back onto the burger. Like I said, this is an art, not a science. Now we're putting them back on, and hopefully now that they're like on top of it, then we'll get a little bit more fusion. I like to smash it a little bit more. It is time to go ahead and start melting the American cheese on there. The process is almost done. This is a little bit messier of a burger than most, by the way. I'm not a fan of American cheese for any other application in the whole world except burgers. I feel like that American cheese was like literally just designed for burgers. I am going to make the call and go ahead and pull the burgers. Obviously, make sure that you put it on the bottom of the bun. You're gonna have kind of 2 layers. Obviously, be very careful. Might be a good idea to find like a fork and knife for this one. Give it a good squeeze like that. Oh, those look absolutely amazing. That's quite a mess that I'm gonna have to clean up later. Don't worry, I'm not gonna make you sit through that. And there you have it. Those are your Oklahoma style smash burgers. Thanks for making Oklahoma onion smash burgers with me.